Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
So you are a tech nonprofit founder.
I am. I lead product and design at Unveil Labs, which is uh, we're a legal tech nonprofit um, focused on helping defendants navigate the legal process with kind of tangential work in the broader kind of legal tech transformation space because it's a huge mess. Are at least, I mean, legal systems everywhere, I would imagine, are pretty behind the eight ball. But specifically in the US, it's particularly kind of like stark in terms of, you know, what is available to folks and like the pitfalls that courts fall into as a result of them being so far behind. So our group helps bring courts along and also finds ways to serve both courts in terms of their outcomes and defendants.
Can you, give a bit of backstory into how you fell into this space, how you got to work with the Ohio government?
Oh man, this is quite a interesting story. So actually, myself and my co-founders, we all met at a hackathon, and it originally started as a completely like seemingly very different idea, but like in the same spirit. The idea was essentially to create a bail fund for people who didn't have cash on hand to pay bail, but were sitting in jail waiting for their next hearing and were, missing work, missing childcare, and oftentimes people would take plea deals just so they could get out of jail. And that has consequences in their life broadly. It's just because they didn't have the cash on hand to post bail. Um, so the idea was to create a community bail fund that could be triggered through like a texting service where someone could just text, like a family member could text the bail fund and say, "Hey, I have someone who's locked up. We need you, like, could you help us post bail?" And then we would get them out as soon as possible and then, make sure that they attend court so we can get the bail funds back, right? Um, so that was the idea. We won this hackathon. We got some seed funding. We did some discovery work, and we kept, the bail fund was a huge problem, or like posting bail is a huge problem. But we also kept hearing from public defenders specifically just how unprepared defendants were for court because there's just so much going on, and public defenders just don't have time to, communicate all of the things that they need to because they have hundreds of clients that they're representing at any time. And that strains the relationship. It just is like a really poor defendant experience. And oftentimes it leads to people just not showing up. So that was something we had in the back of our heads, just like ruminating on. And when we were going through with creating this community bail fund, we found out that there are other national organizations, one of which was opening a chapter in the place where we were going to do our pilot. So we were like, let's not reinvent the wheel. We have this other problem that we know is like fairly validated from folks in the area. Let's see what it would be like to tackle that. And we kind of went from there.
To use the tech world lingo, you had a MVP and then you pivoted.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we had like a concept. We didn't really have like any kind of like workable prototype, and we had more just like the concept. We had pitched the concept had landed, and yeah, we pivoted after we found out that essentially we had bigger fish that were doing the same thing and had been doing that same thing in other markets and doing really well on it. And just, yeah, didn't make sense for us to go head to head with them when there were other bigger or other similar problems that they didn't have the capacity to address, but were still, causing huge problems for folks.
Great. And so tell me a bit more about the current chat messaging service you offer to defendants in the, how is it pronounced, the county you operate in?
Cuyahoga.
Cuyahoga. Okay, Cuyahoga
Yeah.
County in Ohio.
Yes, yes. Cuyahoga County is one of them. We more recently started working in Garfield Heights, which is an adjacent municipality. But yeah, so the service we provide is essentially a text notification service for things that are happening in a defendant's case. Um, and it seems, like it's not rocket science. Setting up a texting service, like you go to your hairdresser and they send you an appointment notification saying, "Hey, day before, are you still on for that haircut tomorrow?" It was wild to hear that a lot of court systems did not have that capability set up. And, imagine that you miss your hair appointment, no big deal, right? But you miss a court date for a felony charge, there's a warrant out for your arrest. And, maybe the piece of mail went to a previous address, or, you're staying at someone else's place, and you don't get the piece of mail. And then there's a warrant out for your arrest, which has all sorts of consequences. Brings up, I won't get into all the details, but and it seems like such a simple problem to solve. We just need to be able to notify someone in a method that makes sense to them at a time that they're ready and willing to act on that message, right? And what has been found through like academic research pretty recently in the last like 5 or 6 years is that a simple texting service or texting notification service increases court appearance rates by up to 20%, which is insane. That not only, saves the courts a lot of, not only is good for defendants because they don't have these extra charges, but it also saves the courts and the county and the municipalities tons of money because they don't have to reschedule hearings, which, they had judges' time and everything. And also they have to send out a warrant, which costs money. So it's a super clear win-win on both sides. And our hypothesis, like following the defendants being notified leads people to show up to court. We think there's more juice to squeeze there in that helping defendants not only like know what's going on or know when to show up, but also what might happen and helping them feel prepared for what is happening, kind of augmenting the work of a public defender will increase that court appearance even more than 20%. So that's something that we have been working on, kind of like from an analytics perspective, making the case for it and seeing whether or not there is an additional add-on benefit from people feeling more prepared.
Why did you decide to go down the nonprofit business structure route?
Yes, this is a very important question and one that we like went back and forth with a lot. I think the nature of working with governments are very risk averse. And even if they're super sold an idea and it makes a lot of sense, no one wants to be the first one to act. So that inherent risk aversion made it really, we like knew that it was going to be really difficult for us to get our first customers. And in order to, fund ourselves so that we could like focus on this work and really like do it right, we needed an infusion of capital. But we didn't want to give up our mission. Like there's kind of a chasm. I'm sure other folks have talked about this on your podcast, or you've talked with other folks who've said the same thing. There's kind of a chasm between like true for-profit funding where there's equity or debt funding and like philanthropy, which is mostly, I'll be blunt here, but it's mostly just based on the story that the philanthropy can tell about what they're doing and not necessarily about like the impact needs to be sexy and the thing that they're doing needs to be sexy in order for them to buy in. So, and there's this like middle ground of people who are like maybe the ROI isn't as you know, enticing for a like traditional funder, but like it's not sexy enough to be considered by philanthropy. So like we found ourselves in the middle of that, and we were wondering like which path to take. I think we ultimately made the right choice. We had some like debt funding that we could have pursued, but it would have kind of eroded our mission. Like we would have had to have made choices, and we've seen other organizations, actually some similar ones, make similar choices and like have to ultimately exit because, um, you know, uh, the funders came knocking, and the the revenue that they're bringing in wasn't meeting their expectations. So they needed to get their liquidity figured out. So we didn't want to have to worry about that, and thus we pursued the nonprofit route.
A good point, because yeah, if you take money from the traditional for-profit space, they would expect a large return on that investment. So then you have to balance business growth with social impact, and it's hard to do both.
Yes, yes. And then you end up basically just selling to, like, if in our case, we're kind of a business to consumer like organization. We build something that ultimately helps the consumer, like the defendant. That's like our client, but they're not the ones who's buying our service. It's the government who's buying our service, and the government needs to see value in that service. So what our fear, if we went in the debt or equity funding route, was like, we're going to end up just building something that we think the government wants and doesn't actually serve the needs of people. So yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about the team? So yourself as a product designer, and then one of your other co-founders, I believe, or the other two co-founders have more of a PhD research background.
Yeah. So our executive director has kind of a political organizing, poli-sci background. They've done a lot of political campaigning and organizing. So they're very well connected in the like local and like regional government that we were starting our work in, which was incredibly helpful to like have those connections. And then our other co-founder is a academic researcher, like lots of research, like statistics background, which we found a really interesting angle to leverage in getting our work off the ground, which I feel like a lot of other organizations don't have this, or like don't pursue this route just because they don't have the personnel. But like we found a way. Basically, there are funders that are interested in pursuing new like criminal justice initiatives from like an academic research lens. So they were interested. That's what I was saying earlier about like we have this hypothesis that more people will attend court because they feel more prepared. And most people, or most governments, were selling that too. We just have to like sell that as the vision and not have like hard data behind it, because unless they sign up and allow us to do all of these things. But we Arnold Ventures, which is one of the biggest funders of criminal justice research in the United States, we pitched our idea of like, wouldn't it be interesting for us to learn whether or not there's that additional bump on court appearance from engaging with people and making them feel more comfortable and more like prepared for their court cases. And that has been a source of funding that has helped us both like deepen our product moat and like find the thing that like really connects with people, and like kind of legitimized us in this space as well. I mean, most organizations don't have a PhD researcher on staff to do that. And like she's done a ton of work to get us there. But I feel like that's been an interesting flavor of our story that has really like been instrumental in getting this Tioga County partnership on board.
Amazing. So to work around the limitations, you chose a non-profit business structure. You leveraged government and political connections, and you got help from organizations who had some experience in this space as well.
Yes. Yep.
Brilliant. I feel like there's a lot of great lessons there that other tech nonprofit organizations can take to get their projects off the ground.
Hopefully, yes.
Because I've heard that like with government, it's probably, you mentioned they're risk averse, but in particular, they want to fund something that is already working or there's evidence that it's already working.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that's why that, like, if we can have someone else help us fund the generation of that research to show whether or not it works, then like that can be used in lieu of having a bunch of, you know, contracts with governments. Like we've already generated that evidence in an academic sense rather than like needing to generate this like huge, you know, like we already have to have like 5 or 6 courts on board before we get like real traction. If we can like academically show like statistically significant results in court appearance rates, even in just one like emblematic county like Cuyahoga County, yeah, like that helps legitimize us like a lot. Because a lot, you know, a lot of startups are just like a lot of like you have to place trust in the founders and you have to place trust in the team that like the thing that they're doing they're going to follow through on and like the thing works just because, you know, other people say that it works. But if you have like hard data published somewhere that other people have looked at and said like, yeah, this is working, that I feel like that speaks volumes.
Right. So you mentioned that even though the government is funding this, they are ultimately not the end users. It's actually the defendants. So
Right.
how do you think the concept of product market fit applies to the work you're doing?
I mean, it is crucial, but you have to tie the thread between the three, you know, or the two actors, right? Like, how does this service? There's a story of how the service helps the defendant. You know, we prepare folks with what's going on in their court case so they feel more prepared. And our hypothesis is that level of preparedness helps people feel more comfortable, which helps them feel more engaged in their case and more likely to attend, right? That's like kind of the causal inference that the causal strain or string that we were tying together. And then if that is true, if we're serving our defendants, that reduces court or it reduces failure to appear rates. So more people are showing up to court. And that has a financial benefit to the courts. So basically, like on us delivering on our mission to our users, like the additional, you know, amount we're able to help people feel prepared, and the more people we help show up to court, that like, you know, saves more money for the court. So it's like we have every incentive to help our users, and the court also is more incentivized to like buy into our product because like that by serving our end users, we are helping them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Um, creates like a um, what's the term? Snowball effect.
Yeah, that's right. It is kind of a snowball effect.
Um, can you talk a bit about what it's been like as a non-technical founder and how you got that development support?
Yes. Originally, it's honestly, like it's been so amazing. Like I feel like I've learned more in the time that we like went from concept to like MVP about like product management and like the trade-offs of technology than I had for like the previous 5 years of working in tech. Like it's crazy. Um, so and we were getting this started in a really interesting time. When we were having our early conversations with Cuyahoga County, trying to like, you know, get that product market fit. Um, like AI was in its infancy, and it was just kind of like, oh, this thing can help you like write poems or like write funny jokes. Um, and now I feel like if I have the technical direction or the like language, if I can string the direction of what I want to learn, I can essentially either learn what I need to learn or have enough like context about the thing to ask someone that I trust and like get a response really quickly. So basically, like I'm kind of beating around the bush here, but like in like finding product market fit and like figuring out what MVP actually looks like, um, and having like the development and like the improvement of AI models like go along with that. I feel like I have been able to kind of like teach myself a lot of things, um, which is insane. Like 10, if I were trying to do this 10 years ago, it would take me twice or three times as long to learn the things that I need to. And like if I didn't have the network of support that I do, with like engineering friends, um, then I would have been completely lost. Um, and in the early days, we were working with uh, a CivicTech consultancy, product development consultancy called Theory and Principle, who's now um, uh, kind of a subsidiary of Factor. Uh, and they're great. Like they're so good, and they helped kind of like steer my product brain into like requirements that make sense. But like I feel like now I can kind of do that on my own because I have the like I have I have the design brain of like what might this experience look like and like what are the trade-offs, and like I can get the technical assistance that I need. Like I can get like 70% of it from an AI. The 30% of polishing and making the product look like great and actually function great, um, that's like the remaining 30% that I feel like um, I still can't do myself.
Right. It's pretty good. I mean, it's like I think it's like I did like a UX UI boot camp a while ago. It's like a 120-hour course, and they're
Yeah.
saying that when designing a product, it takes 80% of your time to create. Um, sorry, in the last 20% of the project will take up 50% of your time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's about right. But like in terms of like the breadth, yeah, I don't know. Like I was originally so overwhelmed with like learning the technical kind of like trade-offs of everything. And I would lean a lot on the engineering team to try and, just like help me understand that. And now I feel like I can get, yeah, like 60 or 70% of those answers, like just by having the right words to direct to it and like several iterations in the context of the problem that I'm trying to solve. Um, And obviously, like the actual building of the technology, I feel like it's still like not quite good at that. But teaching me, a non-technical person, about how our tech works and what the trade-offs are with different approaches, it's insane.
Amazing. And what do you have any particular AI tools you recommend or like to use?
Yeah, I essentially have like a a knowledge base that I keep up in I have like a GitHub repo of a bunch of like things that we've done, like kind of product strategy, that is like acts like a second brain for me. And I use Claude Code to like query that knowledge base every once in a while or add to it. Like if there's a new development that I'm like trying to puzzle through, like I'll like query it for like historical guidance and like come some of the technical documentation that like I'm not as familiar with. Um, and then like upload new context to it um, after each conversation. So that's kind of my workflow right now is like querying a knowledge base as like instead of like looking through a bunch of like emails and like trying to remember where I put certain notes, like everything just lives there and I can ask it anything from like what happened 3 weeks ago when we talked to so and so to like what would happen if we did this in the context of these four things. Can you go on like do some research on what other similar organizations have done? Like it's wild. We live in wild
Right.
times.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and like the AI models are just getting more and more capable, and there's a competition.
It's absolutely insanity. I'm a Claude person though, for now.
Right. So, the organization, you decided to make it nonprofit to protect the mission, and the tech, the software was a very core part of the project from the beginning. So, was that very intentional, or did you also like realize maybe there were some limitations to being so tech focused?
I think, I mean, uh it was a focus from the start. Because I mean, like way back when we did this hackathon, it was like the impetus was like, how can we use technology to improve the legal system for all stakeholders? So that was like our guiding force to begin with. But I just like the legal system is so locked down, like physically speaking. So there's like not a lot of like physical improvements you can make. Or like the juice to squeeze is like a lot less. But the technical systems are so incredibly out of date and like there's just like so much room for improvement that it was like honestly a no-brainer. At least in the legal tech space that like um there are opportunities to use technology to improve the process. I think especially with like um in other ways, like I feel like there's still a lot of room for improvement on like low tech and like even non-tech solutions that like get overlooked on their impact just because they don't like seem as sexy to fund, which is really unfortunate. uh like it was even hard for us to get funding for like we're doing a texting service. This is not like putting data centers in space. Like it's not what anyone wants to fund. It's like you know people have been doing texting services since like the 90s or whatever. um but it's like accessible. It's like super easy to stand up. It's modular. Like there's so many benefits to it um, that like a lot of people would just be like, oh, why don't you just like no longer do texting and then just make it a chat bot? Like you could probably get so much funding from that. But like that is not the solution that makes sense for the users. Like no one's going to think to go to a chatbot and ask questions about it, their court case. They don't like, they need to know first what's going on and be notified in a way that is accessible to them so that they know that they can learn about it, right? Like, and yeah, so it's like, I feel like I'm getting around, sorry, I'm going around this question a little bit, but it seems to me that like a lot of philanthropy wants to fit a square peg in a round hole. Like I want you to make something sexy and then make it social impact too. When like the tool does not fit the need a lot of times.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I was just asking that question to explore the idea because, yeah, certain like AI is definitely useful, but like, I don't know, all these trends that pop up, metaverse or like voice. I remember like back in Alexa and like
Yeah,
Google,
yeah.
it was like huge. Oh, this is going to be like game changing, and it's like not really. It's just
A
another
smart
surveillance
timer.
tool.
Yes, a
Yeah, yeah,
surveillance
yeah.
tool and a smart timer.
That's all I use Siri for, is like setting a 10-minute timer for my cooking.
Yeah, I've turned Siri off. I'm out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, talk about product market fit. Yes. Yeah, so it's a lot of, so yeah, staying true to the mission and not getting distracted by what, not just trends, but also even like sometimes the donors or philanthropists themselves might be like, oh, are we
Yeah, yeah,
exploring this? And you have to like politely say no.
yeah. I can't tell you how many times we've like been like reached out to with like RFPs about like, well, like, is there a blockchain element? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Oh my God.
you remember when that was a thing? That was like 2022, 2021. I don't know. There's a big
Yeah.
blockchain obsession, crypto
Yeah.
mania, and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, all
like,
over LinkedIn. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And there's like, we have so much money that we want to throw into this, and we're like, we could really use that to like build a great service and like start to like market it out to other governments. But no, of course not. Like, you're gonna fund some weird crypto thing.
Wow. Okay. Good for the crypto bros, but yeah, not so good for.
Yeah, you guys go ahead. I feel like I've done too much. I've done too much shitting on philanthropy. I need to stop.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sometimes these billionaires they actually helped contribute to society.
Sometimes they do. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes they do great stuff. They do. They do. Not always. Not all philanthropy is bad.
How do you go about with getting new donors, or do you actually not want new donors? Do you want to get more money from existing donors?
Yeah. I think it really depends on the type of product you have and like what you're offering. Um, there's, organizations that like are trying to service a like broad population uh that like isn't super hyper specific, and it's easier for and more palatable for like the broader public, and it's easier to fundraise because people like relate to it. um I think that makes it easier to do more like crowdfunding, uh like worth the investment for us. Like, we're in such a niche, and like it takes a while even just to like explain to someone like what we're doing and like why it matters. That the kind of like broader like, donor by donor fundraising hasn't really been uh an avenue that we've put much time and investment in. uh when there are like specific philanthropies, research organizations, and like specific like pseudo government entities that are focused on this space of like um, improving access to justice technology specifically, or just like improving outcomes for defendants that we have put more time in.
So yeah, in one of our earlier chats, you mentioned that there is not a heap of resources and support out there specifically for tech nonprofits. And in our emails, you did mention some resources. Can you go through like what has been helpful for you?
Yes. There have been some accelerators that have been really helpful. Um, we went through the Camelback Ventures accelerator. That was great. Um, Fast Forward is a great organization. They fund really important work. And then I think one of the more unsung and smaller, but like super helpful resources, at least for the United States, is called CivStart. Um, and they are hyper specific on, tech solutions that improve local government infrastructure and like services. So they are essentially a like an organization that like brings together local government leaders from, counties, cities, like across the United States, and startups, nonprofit startups, for-profit startups, anyone who is looking to serve those government stakeholders. So like you have this group of highly motivated and like interested local government leaders that are like have already vetted for you, that like they care about like using technology to improve their services for their constituents. And like they provide all these resources and kind of like mentorship and programming for folks who are looking to get started in the kind of like civic tech space. That have, yeah, like I only found out about them about like a year ago, and I've like gone back and forth, and they've helped me get connected with some really great people and like really promising leads. So big hats off to them.
Brilliant. Um, and do you find that like even looking at were there other specific tech nonprofit organizations that you took inspiration from? Like for example, I believe in India there's an organization called Adalat AI, which does similar work to you. Like they help defendants with understanding the Indian legal process, but also they help automate back end paperwork systems.
I did not even find I've never heard of them before. That's really cool. Um, there's one group that was more of a I mean, they do really amazing stuff. Their mission is or their product was slightly different, and holy crap, I'm blanking on the name of them now. Um, oh, it's gonna bother me, but maybe I'll just send it to you afterward. Um, but basically, they were kind of a cautionary tale for us because they actually went the for-profit route. Um, and they were a tool for public defenders that were essentially like a communication platform that helped like with the communication and like managing all of that and scheduling with um, their clients. So it wasn't directly defendant focused, but it helped public defenders like, manage communications, manage schedules, like make sure everyone was aware of what was going on. But they took equity funding from VC. I'm not sure if they were like social impact VC or not. But they essentially got bought out by a larger like court case management system provider, like one of the large vendors for legal or for court systems, and that's just kind of got folded into their set of services. So yeah, they got out, and like I'm sure that like hopefully it continues to help defendants. But that was not really like the goal for them was more like to help public defenders with doing their jobs. There wasn't a direct like defendant empowerment and defendant like outcomes mission to their work. So we saw really easily that like if we went down that route, it could have been like, okay, well, like, you know, this isn't working as well as we want it to, and like the governments aren't responding as like quickly as we wanted you to, like maybe we should like transition our focus. Like, you know, there'd be all this pressure. So we did like have some chats with them. Great people, like really amazing like product and like engineering folks that we talked with. And yeah, like they went the path that made sense for them. But I think we took the harder path. Like obviously going the nonprofit route is like a lot harder. Like they were able to like, I mean, I didn't hear much of like difficulties with funding and like, you know, stop and start that we have had to deal with going the route that we've gone through. But I think, you know, us being able to like stay true to our mission has made a big difference.
Amazing.
It has
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. That, again, yeah, you have, if you went the for-profit route, like investors would particularly put pressure for an exit because that's when they make their money back. And I think a lot of tech founders in the for-profit space, their goal is either IPO or exit.
Yeah. And the people who are buying are not necessarily interested in your mission. They don't care about the defendants. I mean, at least I haven't found a large organization who has that as central to their mission and have like gained a critical mass yet.
And that's not where the money is. I guess the money is in the legal, the case management, that side, which is, as you mentioned, very outdated. But like the defendants, yeah. And this is where nonprofits can play an important role, like building products for those that get left behind.
Yeah.
Just going through my questions. So given all the challenges, all the struggles, would you advise people to create their own tech nonprofit, or what advice do you have for people?
My advice. Okay, here's my advice. If you're starting something like this, start it as a side project. Definitely do that. And what you need to do before you feel like you're ready to like jump off the deep end is you need a champion. If you're in like GovTech, you need a champion in a place where you feel like your service is viable and is like a good test case. And you need someone who is willing to like stand behind your product, like in front of all of the barriers that are going to be put in front of you. Our folly was that I was still doing it on the side for a while. And we thought that, you know, like given the research that was available and like a lot of like support tangentially that we had in the county, in Cuyahoga County, that we wanted to do this pilot in, we thought that it would be, you know, a walk in the park, just like, you know, getting people to sign off that needed to sign off, because like, and everyone we talked to was like, this is a great idea, we love it, like I have all of these people to connect you with to like get you across the finish line. But we hadn't had a champion on the inside in the court system that said, this is something that's really important. I'm going to go to bat for this and I'm going to like face all of the political backlash potentially because I believe in what you guys are doing until about 6 months ago. And that's the reason we have been, resurrected in Cuyahoga County. And what we should have done from the start is if we weren't able to get that partner on board, we should have just, put it on ice until we could. And, there's a question of like, what does a champion look like? How do you know that they're actually like, willing to go to bat for you? And I think that is there's probably no like straight answer to know like for sure. But having someone as close as possible to the thing here's actually the most important part, with a budget that they can easily like kind of just corral, like someone high enough up that like has their own line items that they can kind of like massage to get you through the door that you need to, at least to start. That is probably for anyone doing GovTech stuff. That's the lesson that I have for them that we learned the hard way.
Brilliant. But you would still recommend it?
I would still recommend it. Yeah, definitely. I have learned more like in the year that I was doing this full time. I learned more in that year than I have in like 10 years because like there's just so much new stuff. You're learning how to like what to focus your time in, how much of your time is worth dedicating to that, like scoping things and like getting down. And that like forced us to get down to like what is the most essential version of this thing, and like what are the things that are really going to move the needle and help our defendants understand what's going on, like feel prepared and ready to go and improve court appearance. So like, I think those constraints are actually really healthy, at least to start, because you could do anything and like everyone has ideas. We talked with so many public defenders and defendants who are like, if only I had this, if only I had this. And, everyone's laundry list of requirements is incredibly long, but like you only have so much time to dedicate to the thing. So yeah.
Amazing. Whilst we have a few minutes left, I wanted to ask about some of your work outside of Unveil. So yeah, what was the work that you were doing in tech before that? And what is some of the CivicTech work that you're doing now?
Yes. Before this, I was working for Rocket Mortgage. I was a product designer at Rocket, which was not the most fulfilling work. I mean, they're cool. Like people are great. I loved working there. But it was not scratching the itch that I wanted it to. There was, something more creative that I wanted to do, and I wanted to like have a closer tie to feeling like I'm actually like making someone's life maybe just incrementally better. And the opportunity arose, and eventually I had the opportunity to like build this thing out, which was amazing. Right now, I am working for a CivicTech consultancy called NAVA PBC, Public Benefit Corporation. And I work on I work with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid in the US on Medicaid eligibility systems. So like making it easy for folks to apply for Medicaid benefits and know whether or not they're eligible for those benefits, which is a quagmire currently. So it's a fun, more fun, big problems to solve.
And do you think that this CivicTech space, tech for good space, is it still very niche, or is it becoming a part of the public conversation, entering people's consciousness?
I think so. Here's an interesting thing. I think if you asked me this before Doge, I think I would have a completely different answer. Because before then, it was a very niche. Like no one really knew what was going on. No one really cared. And then the U.S. Digital Service, which is essentially the like kind of like product development, like tech transformation arm of the federal government, was taken over by Elon Musk, which we all know what happened there. And that like it brought that a lot to people's attention, and I still don't know like whether or not people like what people take away from that, and whether it goes beyond the fact that like, oh, it was just this really, you know, uh horrible weapon used to like defund a lot of things in the United States. um but regardless, it's like more on the public consciousness, I believe. Uh, and I hope that people continue to see that it is something worth dedicating time and money to. I think the problems associated with government tech are not well understood yet publicly, but I hope that one day it will become more apparent to people, because I think it's like, I mean, there's a gazillion problems in our world, and we all have to figure out how much time we want to spend focusing and trying to solve the ones that we care about. And yeah, government technology is admittedly a small one, but kind of a crazy one.
I guess it's like people that don't really they take it for granted until things start to go really wrong.
And like, I mean, here's my hot take is that, at least I'm speaking from a US perspective here, but people in the United States complain about the government. I think about like, and like, oh, government services, they suck. They like, they're so hard to access, they're so confusing, blah blah blah. I think 75% of the reasons for that is because we have not set ourselves up for success in terms of like delivering solutions to people like through technology. We've made it so convoluted to build technology for governments to build technology that it's just like completely decimated our ability to deliver services. And if more people knew that, like if more people knew the depth of like why our government service is so bad, like the nuances behind that, I am really curious to see what people would do about that. But I don't have a megaphone, so.
In the meantime, though, like that what you're describing is probably a decades long process of transformation. So do you think that tech nonprofits have a role to play to help fill the gaps whilst the government gets its things in order?
I think so. I think there are targeted places where government tech can really be helpful. And I have dreamed about this with some friends in the civic tech space for a while now. But if there was like an acquisition arm of the government for like civic tech and gov tech products, that would be like, I feel like it would transform the space where like interesting new ideas, like people could bring them up, start selling them to state and local governments, and like eventually they could become like absorbed by a state or by the federal government and like used and like scaled more broadly. And like I feel like that would drive competition in the space and provide like a vehicle for funding, like an exit strategy, basically, for people wanting to do stuff in the civic tech space, which like currently there's absolutely no funding model and absolutely no like equity or like exit model.
Love it. Yeah. So it expands the market for these types of products. Yeah. And it builds an entire ecosystem.
because right now there's just like essentially just consultants that like pay or that like government pays consultants to build these like really shitty products because there's no competition and there's no
Mhm.
incentive for competition. So like the systems are horrible. The like uh kind of like regulations around like what can and can't be built, how it can be built is horrible, which like compounds that problem. So not only is there no competition, but like there's no ability to like build systems the right way, even if you were to like start them over. Um, and yeah, we need an injection of like people trying things and like the right things getting elevated and like scaled that we currently there's no model for.
Yeah. And yeah, it also, the benefit of that idea is it brings talent in-house into the government to reduce reliance on these external
Right.
consultants.
Absolutely. Yes. That is a huge, that would be a huge benefit.
And people might argue, oh, like if the government sets up this acquisition thing, there's going to be a lot of corruption and it's all about who you know. But in the for-profit space, that it is also a
The
lot like that
exact
as
same
well.
thing. It's already like that. So
Yeah, just it, replacing. Yeah, it's a different government has a very different focus and a very different. They just by nature of its structuring, it's a lot more accountability.
yeah. And I guess the problem ultimately is like the incentive structure of like once it is acquired, it's like, okay, how does it stay accountable? Like because profit is not the motive. Like the motive is actually like some more squishy metric of like how efficiently are we distributing this benefit to people or like, what have you. So that becomes more difficult, but not unsolvable, I don't think. I'm
Right?
hopeful.
Yeah, optimism is great. I notice that when I
Another
speak to
thing,
Americans, the Americans are very optimistic in general, which is a good thing.
another thing you have to start in this space is you have to be incredibly optimistic, right? Or like naively optimistic. That's another thing.
The American spirit.
Yep.
Amazing. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been a lovely chat. Thank you so much for setting this up. And I hope this has been helpful to anyone who listens.
I think this will be super helpful for people who thinking about starting their own tech nonprofits to solve problems in their communities or work at a tech nonprofit. Um, yeah, and yeah, yeah, just hope that maybe in a few years' time, or if you have more lessons to share, we could do a round two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff cooking right now, so I'll keep you posted.
Love it. All right.